Hey, Rafael, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Yvonne. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited about our guest today. We've got Miss Andrea Mills, and she is president of Ametros.
I really am as well. They do such an incredible job, Ametros does, in this particular space. And Andrea has been with them for a long time, recently became president of the organization about 8 months ago. Such a um, great representative of our workers' comp industry. I really admire her.
Yeah, so we have a great conversation. We talk about empathy, one of my favorite topics. But before we head on to the episode, I want to just talk about, for those folks that might be newer to the industry and whatnot, could you please explain what an organization like Ametros does and how they fit into the overall workers' compensation puzzle?
You got it, right? So oftentimes, individuals, as a result of the injury, become eligible for Medicare. And when you're settling a file with a Medicare beneficiary, you've got to make certain you take Medicare's future interest into account. And that means, right, one of the things is to allocate a certain number of dollars out of that settlement for the claimant to have sufficient funds to pay for that future medical care. Sometimes a claimant is not yet a Medicare beneficiary, but is anticipated that he or she will become one, maybe because of age, right? If you're 62 or 63, at 65, you become eligible for Medicare. So in either situation, either because you already are or you were anticipated to become, Medicare becomes a part of that settlement conversation. And now, after the case settles and these dollars are in existence, what does that injured worker do with those dollars? What can they pay for? Who can they go treat with? How much would you pay each of these medical providers for each visit? Those are the kinds of things that a company like Ametros helps injured workers with post-settlement.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining that. What about for somebody that's not Medicare age or not near Medicare age? Does Medicare still come into play?
It could, right? It definitely could, either because of the catastrophic nature of the injury. Maybe he or she, the individual, has applied for Social Security disability benefits. If an injured worker applies for disability benefits and gets awarded disability benefits, then that individual becomes Medicare eligible once they have received 24 months of disability benefits. So even though not necessarily a current Medicare beneficiary, that individual, either because of disability or because of age, could become a Medicare beneficiary. So in a lot of cases, in comp cases that settle, that's exactly what the folks are trying to do. Make sure that if within a year or two that individual gets to Medicare, what happens to that Medicare coverage then? Who pays for the bills, right? Making sure that there is a plan for future treatment for that individual.
And I wish I had thought of this question when we were talking to Andrea, but it just popped into my head. What about, so an Ametros, a company like Ametros is really kind of like a financial planner then for the person that gets a settlement. They help them sort out all their funds. I mean, let me ask you this question. If a person gets a settlement, they don't just get handed a lump sum, right? Is there always a company like an Ametros that's kind of attached to that file? How does that work?
Not always, right? Which is really confusing. And you wonder how in the world can folks who aren't trained in that area survive the challenges of that. It's still a small percentage that of the folks that settle and hire a company like an Ametros. So they're not necessarily financial planners, right? Sometimes those funds come in a lump sum, in one full lump sum. Sometimes those funds come on an annual basis because there's been a structure or an annuity that has been purchased that provides those funds on an annual basis. Either way, Ametros helps that individual to manage those funds, right? And start making decisions about if you need orthopedic or neurological care, or physical therapy, or medications, right? Where can you go to get that? And how much will each visit cost? So that there is some planning, since there are limited resources, to make sure those dollars last as long as possible.
So I feel like I asked you the same question twice, but thanks for answering it. But I
That's
think
okay.
for those of us that don't swim in this lane, I think it is a very confusing part of the industry. So anyway, I'm looking forward to talking to Andrea, and let's get to it, huh?
Let's get to it.
Welcome, Andrea. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So let's start off with Andrea. Tell our listeners that might not know you just a brief intro about yourself, what you do, your role in the workers' comp system, and just give us a short overview of what your stakeholder position is.
Okay, sure. Yes. So hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Mills. I'm the president of Ametros. Ametros is the leading and largest professional administrator within the workers' comp realm. We have some liability members as well, but we really help injured workers or injured parties who are going through a settlement and are receiving medical funds that are supposed to last them either a lifetime or a couple years, et cetera, depending on the type of case, if it's workers' comp or liability. And we help them manage their funds. We help them navigate their healthcare journey, try to provide them service and care and the things that they may need after the settlement. Because in workers' comp right now, if they're a injured worker, they have a lot of resources. And then after the case settles, a lot of those resources go away. So we try to fill that gap and be that resource for them.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. So, and you might have said it, how long have you been in the workers' comp space?
I've probably been in this space almost 20 years. I've been with Ametros for about 8 years now. I'm in my 9th year.
Very nice. Well, thanks again for joining us. I'm going to have Rafael lead with the questions because if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that all the things that you just said are his world. So I'm going to let him ask you the first few questions.
Andrea, this is a first in history, right? She turns over the mic over to me. That hasn't happened. We have had multiple shows where 30, 40, 50 minutes in it. I haven't said a single word, Andrea. So thank you for showing up and allowing me this opportunity, Andrea. I love you. I love you.
It's so we can bore everybody with Medicare talk.
She's gonna kill me after this. I'm loving this. This is gonna be my favorite episode ever. So I want to first. I really do. I so respect, Andrea, you and the work that Ametros has been doing for a really long time now. You guys have become the premier professional administration in our space, in the entire workers' comp industry, and well earned. Tell the folks generally out there, how does an injured worker come to you? How does that injured worker then go through your process and sort of the everyday stuff that you guys do for them?
Sure. So I think the process really starts when typically on average, the injured worker has been in the workers' comp system about 6 years by the time it gets to Ametros. And we get a lot of introductions either through the adjuster who's positioning the case for settlement, through the Medicare set-aside vendor who knows that they've written a Medicare set-aside and they know this person's going to need a lot of help. There's a lot of medicals, obviously in the MSA or a large quantity of prescription drugs and visits and surgeries and things. And they're like, oh, this would be a great opportunity to have Ametros come in and really help this person. And then we also get a lot of referrals from plaintiff attorneys that also see the value in our service because they want to make sure that their client is set up for success after settlement. So it's typically either driven by the payer, TPA, the plaintiff attorney, or the Medicare set-aside vendor.
Fantastic. Once they are inside your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give us a little bit of, because I'm sure that there's some education component to this. A lot of folks, injured folks, just do not quite understand the world that they're about to enter post-settlement. How do you help with that aspect of things?
Yeah, so it's good to understand if they're currently on Medicare or if they're going to be on Medicare very soon. Obviously, that's why they got a Medicare set aside. So we like to find out, are you on Medicare? What other insurance do you have? Because the MSA is really supposed to only cover what is related to the injury and otherwise covered by Medicare so that it's not a burden onto the Medicare trust. So we try to find out those things to then help provide some educational pieces around that. Like make sure you let your doctors know that we're now the payer. we set them up for success. We try to onboard as many providers and pharmacies as we know that they're working with, but they may move, they may find a different provider. There's a lot of freedom to treat on our platform. So just educating them on the process and how it looks so that we can really fully support them, but also making sure that if there's phone calls that we can make to the providers or the pharmacies, that we take that on and do that on their behalf. Try to have a nice warm handoff if they are represented, from their attorney, making sure that we do like a 3-way call to have the attorney explain to them, what happened with this element of their settlement. And then we like to introduce them to someone who will be managing and helping them, with their case from years to come, or for the first, 90 days, doing a lot of touch points, making sure that we're, walking alongside them because, we do a lot of surveys, and like NPS is such a hot thing to do an NPS survey, but you really can't do an NPS survey on someone because it's like, how likely are you going to recommend this service to a friend or colleague? Well, actually, we never want a friend or colleague to be injured at work. So let's start with that. So we don't ask those types of questions. So the person's viewpoint of a settlement is very small, right? They may have Googled, they may have gotten an attorney, but they don't really know what happened. So we try to help manage those expectations and work with their attorney if they're represented on the transition. And even working with the payers. A lot of times they really have, adjusters and people who care about them and want to make sure that they have what they need after settlement. And so it's, we're settling the file. You're no longer going to be working with me. You're going to be working with someone on the Ametros team, and let's do that nice handoff.
Love it. Just love it. And I know that you guys have excelled at that, right? Communicating with the injured worker, getting down to their level and making them feel comfortable with both the process and kind of the new world, right, that they're about to enter. Give us a little bit of that, right? What is the difference? What exactly does happen, right? I've left my employer carrier, I've settled the file. I'm now kind of on my own, though I've got your assistance. What happens next?
Yeah, so we review the settlement documents with them. We will review their MSA with them, and then we'll also make sure, like, are you still seeing that doctor? Are you still seeing that medication? So we'll ask those types of questions, and then we may find out through that discussion that they're planning on or needing some other kind of care or service that's not covered by Medicare. So then we'll have to educate, well, that's not part of this settlement. That'll be something you need to, put through your group health insurance or other insurance that you may have, or through traditional Medicare if you're on Medicare, and talking through those pieces, because that's where a lot of the confusion lies. A lot of the confusion lies with not knowing that you were supposed to enroll in Medicare, or thinking Medicare, you can pay for everything out of it, and not knowing you have to go get Medicare Advantage plans. Sadly, if someone applied for SSDI and got denied and they don't have other insurance, like those are some sticky situations too, where we try to help navigate and provide some education and resources to someone who may be in that position. So really just education along the way of like, what is this fund for? What is it not for? If you have other things going on, how do we help you, get to the right person or the right pathway to set them up, for success? Or we recently just offered it in 4 states as we were getting our feet under us with our sister company, but offering to provide Medicare Advantage plans. We had about 19 people enroll over 4 states of our members, which is great because they need to have access to Medicare Advantage plans. They need to enroll in them. They need to do that. It's not necessarily part of the settlement, but it is something that we find is a gap and a lack of knowledge, after settlement.
So even though the focus is on the administration of those funds, right, helping the individual sort of come to terms with a new world of theirs, if you will, including, right, and from what I'm hearing from you, educating them that in addition to the Medicare A and B traditional Medicare program, there are Medicare Advantage plans out there that provide hospital, physician, and medication all rolled up into one. So assisting them through the sign-up periods, right? Maybe the choosing of an Advantage plan. There are thousands of them out there. So give me a little bit of how does that take place from your perspective?
Yeah, so we have a sales team that sits within our sister company, and we get I'll call it a lead, or we know of someone who needs to do that, or we sent out a mailer during open enrollment, and they went over to that team. We started small, only in 4 states, but they were able to look at plan options and find what was best for our member population. And something else I should have said at the beginning, but I'll say now too, is one of the biggest parts of our service is the savings through our platform. So the MSA is only so many, it could be hundreds of $1,000s, could be $50,000, could be $25,000, but that money is supposed to last them, their lifetime. And we apply a ton of savings on our platform for providers' offices, surgeries, prescriptions, things like that. So while the foundation of it is to help manage the settlement money and make sure they have access to savings, we just try to take that a step further to make sure that they have what they need and provide that care and feeding for them if they have other things going on in their lives, or they're talk to their adjuster 4 times a week and they want to talk to us 4 times a week. We'll do that too.
Yep, I know you have done that. We have had lots of clients over the years, right, that speak very highly of how humane, how wonderfully they get treated by your staff, how they are able to speak to them and, in a way and in a manner that they can really understand what's happening and what's going on. Andrea, it was definitely one of the points that I wanted to touch with you, savings, right? As you said, normally limited set of dollars that are supposed to last an entire lifetime. So you've got to be really careful how you spend those dollars. And you guys have really produced an incredible network. So I wanted to ask you, how is it, right, that Ametros is able to provide each of these injured workers, right, throughout the country, because you service on all 50 states, providers, right, that are fair, are reasonable, the pricing is right, so that these dollars really do last an entire lifetime. How's that? How could you guys, maybe the only ones who can do that out there?
Well, our business has really transitioned and developed and changed over the 8 years that I've been here. But when we first started, and thinking probably 10 years ago, when I was very close with the Ametros leadership, but I hadn't joined the organization yet, we had stood up a lot of traditional workers' comp networks. Like, you were in workers' comp today, you'll go to this network after. We've really refined that in the most recent years, where we have really our own network of providers and a lot of provider education and outreach, because CareGuard is our full professional administration service. CareGuard is the product. We give our members a CareGuard card to take to the provider's office that have our billing information on it. So it's education and constant education to the provider's offices, because sometimes there's turnover. Obviously, we're working in healthcare. It's always going to have its challenges, but making sure that we are working with those providers, providing education. And we also pay our providers on average less than 10 days from the time of the visit or the time that we receive the bill. So providers like working with us. We pay them really quickly.
Yep, that's a big component of things. We know that, right? Absolutely. So a national network. I mean, all 50 states. That's what you're telling us, huh? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. If and if someone listening to this, or if my gosh, we get to talk to an injured worker and they say, hey, I see Dr. Sally, in Tampa, Florida. I want to make sure, she'll accept, CareGuard as payment. We'll look up to see, do we have any members treating with Dr. Sally now? If not, we'll call, we'll chat through that with their office to make sure that it's, going to be fine and they understand how to bill us and how we pay them, etc.
I love it. Yvonne, you probably know enough, right? Any questions from your perspective? Because you've seen some of this come through. You've been around a couple of years. And you probably have understood this entire process so far.
Well, I don't profess to know the entire process, but I was listening with my listener ears of, what if I were a person that's not very experienced in workers' compensation? And, we're talking about today, I think one of the areas that a lot of people in comp don't really think about unless they're involved in this end of the business, right? So a couple of questions that I have, and I'm always going to default to the injured worker and what they're feeling and thinking. And I think that's a nice segue into what we wanted to bring up about empathy. But let me start with this. When an injured worker comes to you all, what's the general sense? Like, we often talk in the workers' comp space that, it's confusing, it's upsetting, it's frustrating. What do you all find when the injured worker has settled and they're coming to you, and now they've got this, as Rafael put it, this whole new area that they've got to navigate? What is it like for them, and how do you all navigate that?
Yeah, I think from just my perspective of going to mediations over the last several years, either virtually or in person, or, we have a podcast in which we speak with a lot of our members as well, is just understanding their story and kind of starting with like, hey, I'm sure you went to work that day and didn't think you're going to have a devastating injury, but tell us tell us what happened, right? And then tell us what challenges you felt like you needed to overcome within the workers' comp system, and what you are most fearful about now as we move into settlement. And then let's help chat through those fears and how we can support you. And, a lot of these cases sometimes are really unfortunate. Like, they had loved ones standing by them. They maybe lost that loved one, or things happen with marriage breakdown and things like that. So they don't have a ton of other resources and help around them. We have members who don't have a lot of means outside of, the settlement fund. And so we've, kind of helped find some resources, like, here, you can go to a food bank that's in your town. We had a member who just didn't have a lot of stuff. Like, there's kind of going through life with minimal things, and so that they just kind of watch the same DVDs over again. So we all put together DVDs we all had laying around our house that we never watch anymore, and sent a care package with those. So you never really know what someone's going through. You shouldn't assume what anyone's going through, and you absolutely shouldn't assume just based on, a Medicare set aside, that you understand what their medical needs are going to be, or, it's not as straightforward. So yes, before I go meet with anyone, I'll read their Medicare set aside. I'll familiarize myself with the aspect of the case, but I don't want to make an assumption I know anything about anybody. So we all kind of start with, tell us about your injury. Tell us about what you are struggling with right now. And, sometimes it may have a surgery in the MSA and they're like, I don't want to do that. Or I want to put it off a little bit more. Or, I may need a new wheelchair, but I don't really want to pay for that right now. So do I have to do that? Or absolutely, I need a wheelchair and I need to, maybe use more funds this year than I was going to, and help me think through that, Ametros, or help me find the best wheelchair that's, going to meet my needs. So it just kind of goes back to meeting someone where they are, finding out what is they're most fearful about, and making sure that we have services and things aligned to that.
Thank you. And thanks for mentioning your podcast. I'll make sure and put a link to that in our show notes so that people can find it. But absolutely, if you have not listened to the Ametros podcast, it's called It's Settled, right?
Yes.
It's settled. So I know that I've listened to quite a few, and they're great stories. And I'm always encouraging people to listen to those stories of injured workers, because it's why we do what we do, right? They're at the heart of everything that we do in this industry, regardless of what your role is. So yes. Thank you all for continuing to do that. What else? So Rafael pointed out to me that there's a recent article that you authored, and it's out on Work Comp Wire, and it's about empathy. So tell us a little bit about that, and why is that important to you, Andrea?
So empathy is important to me. I guess I'll go a little personal, and then I'll go a little bit more into the professional realm, but and kind of like in business too. So I'm dyslexic. Have always struggled with that growing up. I was just talking to my really good friend whose daughter was just diagnosed with dyslexia, and kind of just giving her some of my thoughts and feelings, because you struggle academically, right? Because like school is taught one way, you learn a different way. So I try to remember that with my own children, like maybe they're just not picking up on a concept because it's not computing in their brain. And so I just try to tackle things from an empathetic viewpoint of, how can we meet someone where they are and then help them and be helpful. So a big driver for Ametros this year and kind of a theme that we have is leading with empathy. And I want to take it through every aspect of our business, from your first interaction with an injured worker or even an internal stakeholder. Someone could be having a rough day. You never know. Through the end piece of our operations, like through all the way through the process. So if they're maybe going to be a member on our platform, we're talking to them, maybe they are a member on our platform, and maybe they need to resolve something and have a billing question, and someone in our billing team has to talk to them. Just showing up with, how can I help you? Understanding that not everyone walks in the same shoes, and maybe people don't retain information the same. Maybe you have to repeat yourself several times. Like, let's not get frustrated with any of those things. Like, let's really help walk in someone's shoes and be helpful to them, and without judgment, and without making assumptions. So it's a big theme for us this year. It's something that we're working through from an educational standpoint with the staff, and our Q1 theme, because we pick a theme every quarter and then we pick a winner of that theme. And we have a lot of themes happening this year, but our overall theme is one team, one mission, and it's space themed. And then one of our strategic pillars is lead with empathy. And then our Q1 theme is orbiting with empathy. And so at the end of Q1, we'll get together as a leadership team and pick out one Ametros colleague that we felt like was orbiting the quarter with empathy, and then we'll highlight them in an all hands meeting. So
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Me too. I love that. Making it real, right? Making it
real.
So that you really are touching. Yeah.
I'm gonna read a quote from your article, which stands out to me. And
Okay.
It says, it's towards the end, and it says, empathy enables us to better serve injured workers, but it also provides us with more fulfilling careers and purpose-driven companies. I love that statement. So as I mentioned earlier, empathy is big for Rafael and I. And one of the questions that we have, and so I'm going to ask it a little bit more specifically. So you just mentioned how you're positioning empathy at Ametros and how the entire organization is embracing that. How do you encourage people to develop empathy? Not just do it, but how do you encourage folks to develop more empathy?
Yeah, I think that's through storytelling and listening. So not being the listener of someone else's story. So meeting with our injured workers, talking with them, understanding what they're going through. That's the only way I think people will learn the process. Like go talk to an adjuster, ask them about their day. They may be working 300 files, find out about that. Go speak with someone else in another department of your work and find out what they do and what they face every day. So I think it's little things like that. It's articulating a message and then being a really good listener and finding those opportunities to hear people out and learn from each other. That's the biggest one that I think is the most effective tool. And then bringing it back to Ametros land, we have an annual company meeting where we always bring a member in to tell their story, so that the colleague that maybe doesn't even talk to an injured worker but sits behind a desk and processes payments, or maybe someone in IT that's developing software and doesn't really understand how it really affects someone, bring someone in and learn from them and hear their story. And then you'll be like, the next time I'm writing code for that person, and I want to do that for them.
I love that. That's amazing.
Me too. Andrea, you guys do such a great job. Your marketing team, kudos to them, because when you guys have had some of those meetings, you will play out a couple of, and they are so incredibly inspiring, right? The stories that you get to hear. You guys have done that also with the podcast. The tidbits that are out and about, which makes you want to dive in and listen to the entire episode. Just so incredibly inspiring, the stories and how you've helped that individual and their family sort of next chapter, right? The next evolution of their lives, which is always difficult, especially with catastrophic injuries. But you guys do such a great job with that. I really always enjoy it. I always read it and listen to it with a smile on my face because it really does. It's so warm. It's so incredibly wonderful.
Yeah, I listen to it and probably cry a lot. So
yeah, I do too. I do. I get emotional. How can you not, right? When you listen to such incredibly significant stories that change people's lives, change families' lives. Yeah.
So before we wrap up and ask you a fun question, I want to ask Andrea, is there something that we didn't get to, or what is the one thing, if people are listening to our conversation today, that you'd like them to take away from today's conversation? What would that be?
If you have someone that you're working with, either professionally or personally, that maybe there's just kind of rub with or you don't get along with, like, just start asking them questions so you get to understand them a little bit more and learn from them. And I think as we think about the injured worker, go as far as just ask them how their week's going. You know, what's something fun they did, what's something they're looking forward to, so you can help build that connection with the injured worker as well, pre or post settlement.
Very good. Very good. Ralph, do you want to ask the fun question?
Of course. So Andrea, we love this question. Of all of our guests, every show, you know, you work hard, you travel the entire country, you're educating folks every day. That takes a lot of time, but we want to know, what does Andrea do for fun? How do you disconnect? How do you get away from it all and sort of enjoy, other aspects of your life? Tell us a little bit about that.
It's funny that you asked that. I got asked what my hobbies were recently, and I just answered very honestly, which are drive children around, because I have an almost 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I just feel like I'm the mom taxi service. So when I'm not driving children around, which I feel like is a strong contender for a hobby, I'm spending a lot of time with my family, with my husband. I work out a lot when I'm not traveling, just because I don't really like to bring extra clothes on a trip, because I will only bring one bag and I won't check it. Just try to do those things, get the quality time together. And I offered to drive the children around with their friends in the car, because then you just learn a lot. So it is like a hobby.
You do. That's absolutely true.
We have both been there. I mean, I know Yvonne has done it. We've done it with our two boys. You're absolutely right. And boy, do you get to learn a lot by listening to their friends and their conversations.
So what do you all like to do as a family? Do you guys go camping, or what's the go-to activity for the family?
Well, we moved last year to a house with a pool. So I feel like, not right now because it's chilly, but we've been on Saturday, we were all hanging out by the pool because it was warm. And then we played golf as a family this weekend, all four of us, which was fun. And then I'm encouraging us all to travel more. And I do like some solo trips with the kids. And then as a family, trying to get everybody to go to Italy with me 3 times this year. But so far, I don't have any takers.
Well,
sign us up.
I have a daughter in Italy, and I go back every chance I get. So.
Yeah. I just have a lot of airline points, I'm going to use them.
Go for it.
For you.
I was just telling my daughter recently, I typically take at least a trip a year, and then she comes this way. But when I go there, I try to go when I have at least 2 weeks to go. Mm-hmm. And I was telling her this last week or so, I'm like, I don't know why I have that thought in my head. Why do I need 2 weeks? Like, I could go for just a week, because I don't want to wait until I don't have like 2 full weeks until the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking for like little pockets of time in between. So I'm like, I really could go for a week. It's not that big of a deal.
I think you should do it. I co-sign.
Awesome. Anything that we didn't get to, Andrea, that you'd like to mention?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our business and the industry and chat with both of you. Thank you.
Rafael, anything that you
shout
didn't
out Gold Stevie Award for sales and customer service here recently to the organization, which speaks
Yes.
so highly again, right? You guys are you really are, Andrea, at the core of that. And your signature has always been how you treat your folks, right? Your customers, your injured workers, how you really make them feel comfortable. Having heard a bunch of folks over the years talk about your staff, and your amazing team, it's resounding. And I think Yvonne said it, right? Because it really matters, right? How you engage with people, how you make them feel, and they become part of you, right? And that's literally at the end of it, empathy is all about that. Stepping into the shoes and really learning from their perspective, what's their lives like every day. So congratulations to you and to the entire team. You guys are awesome.
Thank you. Yes, the operations team has encouraged me to only refer to them as an award-winning operations team.
Oh, I see. Very good.
So there you go.
Yeah, a group of them get to go to New York City next week and get the award. Receive the award. So it's really exciting.
How exciting. That's awesome. Well, I want to underscore what Rafael said. I really do think it's important. Thank you for taking empathy to heart and making it part of your core organization, pillars and all that. I think that's so important. I've heard myself say this several times this year. We have to stop talking about certain things that we've talked about in this industry for a while, and we have to start operationalizing them. And I think that you're really demonstrating a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you here soon at a in-person event.
Thank you.
Until later, hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
You ready for a warm-up, Rafael?
Yes, ma'am.
Me.
La 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 la.
I wonder if Arden is laughing or cursing at us about now.
This may be right about the time where everybody turns it off.
Hey, Rafael, can you believe it? We are halfway through season 6.
I can't. It just feels like we just got started a couple of weeks ago, and now it's halfway through. It's amazing. Time is flying, right?
Time does seem to be flying. So, folks, thank you so much for listening with us. We are currently about to hit 55,000 downloads. We have published 151 episodes. That's a big number.
That's a big number.
And where can folks find us, Ralph?
Well, Yvonne, always, folks can find us on LinkedIn. And I know that we've got a beautiful website that you've put together that folks can come and really learn all about Deconstructing Comp and our latest project this year, Substack, right? With newsletter and all. I don't know how you find the time, but we are incredibly grateful for everybody who's visiting and absorbing the newsletters as well, right?
That's right. You can also find us on YouTube. We launched our YouTube channel last year, and we're playing around with that a lot more. So go find our YouTube videos and, chat with us out there. You can comment, you can send us messages. And then, as always, follow us on your favorite podcast platform, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. And like us, rate us, share us with your colleagues. That is how people find us, and that's how we can expand our reach. So like Rafael said, look for us on LinkedIn, Yvonne Guibert or Rafael Gonzalez. And the podcast has its own LinkedIn page, Deconstructing Comp Podcast. So until next time, hasta luego.